Well, my name is cool. My name is Alex Ball. I am the farmer and manager at Old City Acres. We are a year-round vegetable farm and flexible CSA, and now we also have our farm stand as well. We're now on our 14th season in production. So we've been in the game for a decent amount of time. So I'll give you a little background about myself, the farm, and kind of what we've done and now where we're heading. We started this farm in 2013 uh, as a backyard garden type business where we rented garden plots for multiple different homeowners and then grew it there, harvested it, and then sold it at farmers markets through CSA, things like that. So we were always on rented land on multiple sites. And we did that for a few years, but we couldn't lock down some solid long-term land leases. We weren't able to at that time. There weren't as many opportunities as there are now, like through organizations like MI FarmerLink, that would connect people with growers, landowners and growers. So it was a little bit more difficult back then. So after about 4 years or so of renting land, I finally took the dive and I bought a piece of land. And through that adventure, we learned how to develop properties, how to build long-term infrastructure, and we were at that piece of property for about 4 or 5 years until we kind of changed our business model again and started working more heavily on production and decided to derive less of our value of a business from land holdings. From that to more production. And those who have been farming a long time, you know that traditionally farmland is a holding as asset you purchase early on in your career, you hold on to for 30, 40 years, you make some money while you're farming and growing, and then when you time to retire, you sell that land often for development. It's a kind of a nasty cycle, but it is kind of the cycle that happens fairly often in the scene. So after about 4 or 5 years of owning land, I decided that I wanted to make more money, and I didn't want to spend money on maintaining this asset of the land. I wanted to spend my money on growing my food business and creating more capital through that. So we sold that piece of property, and I'm so thankful to this day that that piece of farmland is still a farmland now. The market gardener took over the piece of land and is growing there. So now we are renting land fully. We rent a few acres in town in Ypsilanti where we live and where the farm is located. So that change of our business from the owner to the rented model was a big shift in how we saw profitability and in the long-term goal of the farm. Instead of saying we're just going to use this to sit on this piece of land for 30 years and then we'll sell it to retire. The goal of the business is to sell produce to make money. So that's kind of a shift in our program. So as in earlier, we are predominantly a flat CSA, which means we are a choose your own style CSA, or folks can order what they want week to week, and then we deliver to their homes, or they pick up from our farm stand in Ipsy or from one of our multiple pickup locations. So today, though, what we'll be doing is kind of chatting about revenue ways to sell your product, markets to sell your produce into, and kind of how to make that sustainable long-term living on the farm if that's your goal. Growing food is extremely difficult. Buying land is difficult. Working through the maze of agriculture is extremely difficult. But I would say that selling your products for the right price consistently is probably one of the hardest things to do in farming. Depending on where you're at, depending on where you live, if you're in a super saturated market, it's going to be much harder to push into that market. But on the flip side, if you're in a very undersaturated, undeveloped market, you're going to spend a lot more money to train customers, to train folks to purchase your products and to value what you're providing. So we'll go through a lot of different options and a lot of different ways that you can try and sell your products. Some things about sustainability as far as economic sustainability, and then just kind of some mindsets to help you work through this. One thing my advisor told me, my farm advisor, his name is Ron Rich. He's actually not even a farmer. He's a professor at EMU who studies small scale farm profitability. And when I started farming, I said I had to find somebody who knows about farming. A lot of farmers know a lot about farming, but they might know about their niche, their circle. So I went to a professor locally, and we did multiple research projects in Washington County where we interviewed farmers, interviewed consumers, interviewed market managers. So trying to understand the market as a whole. And as you develop your farm and food business, you'll simply understand that the only way to work through this is to understand the market you're in. So one thing he always told me, the one thing I keep to my heart all the time, is that the only thing consistent in agriculture is change. Right? So things will always be changing, whether it's the weather, local markets, your own mental state, the consumers' interest in products. All these things are changing constantly. And as farmers, we have to be adaptable. We have to be willing to change at every turn, which doesn't sound fun. And in July, when tomatoes are growing and there's weeds, the last thing you want to think about is adapting or changing anything. But like I said, we have to be able to adjust to markets. And as small farmers specifically, and new farmers, first generation farmers, we have to find niches and spots in the web of the local food system that aren't filled yet, or that we can jump in and beef up, right? You have to work really hard. Again, it's people have been eating for a long time. Having a farm is not a new concept. So a lot of those niches, a lot of those streams are developed, which is great. You can jump into those, but also there's a lot of room to develop new markets. But in that time, you have to understand that developing new markets does take time, does take money. So at any point, you have any questions, any concerns, any ideas, any comment, please feel free to in the chat below. I'll answer those as soon as I see them. We'll do our best to try and make this an a an easy situation to work through together. So yeah, so first thing I'll talk about is I don't know where all your types of businesses you're running. I know it's vegetables, meat, dairy, all of that is fantastic, but the base conversation is still the same no matter what. So when you start a farm business or food business, you have to decide where and how you'll sell those products. Uh, how you operate your business, grow your product, and possibly your farm's located is all affected by your end goals and what you're producing. So, as an example, let's say you want to be a wholesale protein producer, right? And you want to buy land to do this. If you're doing a wholesale product that you're delivering to restaurants or whatever, do you need to buy land as close to town as you need? How close to town you need to be, right? If you're doing a frozen product that's, you're delivering to a few wholesale accounts, you might only need to come to town every once in a while. Um, so because of that, you might want to buy land further out that's cheaper. But let's say you're running a vegetable farm that has a farm stand and that sells directly to consumers. Well, then you might want to be closer to town in order to make that consumer spending easier. If folks driving to your farm, they're not going to drive 3 hours or 2 hours for a thing of tomatoes when there's some other farms that are within half an hour range of that. So when you're deciding what you want to do, you really want to come at this from a holistic viewpoint. And one thing when I started, when I first got into the game, we all look for land, the cheapest space. And that usually does work as far as production goes. But then if you're asking people to come out to that space, to buy your product, you have to be weary and you have to understanding of your customers and what they want to do too. So my last farm, we were located in an area that was not touristy, that was not, uh, there's no other additional things to do while they're out there. So to get folks to come, they would really have to have a demand for your product. So you really, again, all these things you're doing and uh, what you're trying to produce. So yeah, some of the considerations are what you're producing, They said if you're producing microgreens, if you're producing microgreens under lights, then you can do that in the city, right? You can do that as urban as possible. But if you're growing proteins, heavy proteins, you need to be far from town. But all that will then affect your long-term bottom line. So you have to be able to look at this as a holistic picture when you're putting these plans down and be honest with yourself. Let's say you want to grow a salad farm and you're growing salad mix and you want to be within a half hour of your home. If you can't find a space within that, then you have to change your business plan. You have to be willing to take the negative effects of that change in your business plan. So, first off, what do you plan on producing? And that's going to be probably the biggest decider of of what type of model you're using to sell, and then where you're located. And then the biggest, second big thing is who is your end consumer. And many farmers or people getting into food often think they have call it field of dreams mentality. If I build it, they will come. If I put a farm stand up, if I have the CSA put a few flyers out, then the whole community is going to flock to my products, going to want to be a part of that, which really isn't the reality in the long term of running a food business. You really have to understand who your end consumer is and be willing to invest in doing the market research, which doesn't sound fun. It's not like as entertaining or doesn't feel good like planting a tomato. But if let's say you're selling, going to the farmer's market, right? You should go and visit every single farmer's market within the 1 hour radius of where you're planning on selling. Any people that makes up the market of people who are buying your product. Travel to those markets, see what's going on there, and then understand what the local demand is. Um, and I personally, as a business owner and also as an entrepreneur, doing that due diligence can often be soul crushing, right? We have ideas in our mind where we want to do this awesome product, or we want to do this frozen proteins or whatever it is. And you might get to the market, you might get find that the demand is not there or the demand is saturated. So you have to be willing to have ideas, work on them, then have them crushed by the market. Because if you do not listen to the market, listen to those around you, listen to what's happening to other growers, to the rhythm of the market, then once you go and produce those items, if you don't have a place to sell that to, you're going to be in a much worse position. So it's much better to spend the time and money to learn your market before you start growing food, before you even start a business. And I think people often think, oh, I'm in food production, so there's always a demand. Well, there is always a demand for food, but there's also food waste is a huge issue too. So like, people aren't starving because of lack of food production. There's a lot of food access. So you need to understand that before you get into the business. Um, and part of that is spending money doing that consumer research, doing that end consumer research. So that means going to farmers markets, spending the money there, the drive there, going to local CSA farms, farm stands, whatever you can do to understand what's going on. Don't jump into this thinking I'm bringing something brand new into the industry that's never been done before. Because the reality is it probably has. And once you've been around for long enough and seen enough farms open and close and ideas come and go, you really quickly realize that a lot of things we're doing are pretty standard, little twists on there here and there, but they're pretty under they're not easy, radically, new concepts that we're allows are doing. So just make sure that you understand what's going on and understand the marketplace that you're selling into. And also, there's nothing wrong with going to a different marketplace, going to a different region and selling. I live in Ypsilanti. My farm is here. My farm stand is here. I grew up here. I was born here. So I sell to the community here because this is what my values dictate and this is what my business plan is. But I have many other friends who farm in the area and drive to Detroit who sell Eastern Market, where their market community is Eastern Market. It's the greater Metro Detroit area. So just because you live in a space, even like a deep rural space, you might have customers out there, but you also have to be understanding who your core customer is and who your end customer is, your dream customer. And you have to be willing to chase after that and go after that with every ounce of your being. We're in a very competitive marketplace, and I don't mean farmer to farmer. I mean the food marketplace is very saturated and is difficult to be a part of. So you have to be willing to go where the end customer is. And one of my favorite phrases is you have to meet the customer where they're at. meet the customer where they're willing to be at and where you can access them. Someone asked in the comments how long my lease is at my current space. Right now, we are on a year-to-year lease, um, and is fine for me right now. It works. If I didn't have, I personally, since I've been around long enough, I have enough options for land. I don't have a problem now finding additional land or any land to go to because we've been around a lot. We're more stabilized with business. But when we first started out, we had a hard time finding land and finding people who would offer us a lease that was even more than month to month. So now that we're on year to year, it works well for us. You know, three to 5 years would probably be more ideal. But a lot of our farm setup, our tunnels, our infrastructure is mobile, so we can tear it down and move it because we've moved so many times in the past. Not that I would advise that, but you can do that if you need to. So yeah, depending on what your production is, what type of business you're doing, if you're doing grass-fed proteins, then uh, if the only infrastructure if the only infrastructure you're bringing is irrigation and management of the animals there, you're not paying for fencing, then year-to-year lease might not be a big deal. But if you're doing no-till vegetable production, a year-to-year lease might be a huge deal because it takes so much work in order to build up that space. So I would definitely say, look, you have to be very weary of that. And it is difficult to sometimes secure those longer leases depending on the landowners. But I found that as you're more of an established business, you might be able to get a year-to-year lease to start out with, and then transfer that to a 3 to 5 year if they see that you're a good fit for their land. Okay, so going back to what I was saying about starting out, what you have to do, like I was saying earlier, is do your due diligence. You need to understand what's going on and understand what you're selling because you can really easily get in a situation. Let's say it's mid-June and you got a tunnel full of fresh greens ready to roll out, and a lot of people often wait till June to figure out where this is going to, or they'll say, "Oh, I'll go to the farmers market in June." And then there's 10 other farmers there also on the same thing. You're going home with bad product, leftover product. So you need to understand what's going on in your local community and then not be afraid to go out there and research. Talk to other farmers at the market, etc. Okay, so there are a few traditional ways you can sell your product, and these are nowhere near all of them or as detailed as it can be. This in my time in local food community as ways to sell your product. And we're going to talk about, I'm gonna list them all. They're all kind of listed from easiest to get into and hardest to get into. So the first one is on the site farm stand, like a self-serve farm stand. Second would be like a wholesale account, B2B, selling to other vendors, selling to other farms or selling to other restaurants. A farmer's market, then like a CSA program, special CSA, and then kind of the end or the most difficult or most costly would be like a farm store or a larger farm stand, something that where people are actually staffed to work on that. So we're gonna go and kind of go through the pros and cons of all those types of outlets. And like I said, anytime you have any questions, and we'll answer the question. So the on-site farm stand is pretty common, and it's where often a lot of people start out at. It's one of those things that you can do in most areas. A nice little one out of wood, a 4x8 sheet of plywood, with the cover over it with some produce on it. It's very basic. We've all seen that. We've all seen that time and time again. Something like that is very, very low labor. It's easy to get into. And it's nice because there's no driving off the farm. You're not having to leave the product, have to package up as much. And it's super easy to start, right? It could be a card table under a tent, side of the road with a sign that says produce and a coffee can. And when I first started, that's what we did. I took some pallets, I made a little stand. In the afternoon, I put a coffee can out there, and we sold tomatoes and peppers by the side of the road. It's very, very easy to get into. And it's a nice way to get part of the community. It's a nice space for folk to stop by, and it's an easy way to, if you're especially in a rural community, to sell to those rural customers who might want your product, but there might be less of them, and they might not be able to come as often, let's say, to a farmer's market. So I see a lot of farms, even though they go on to being large businesses, they might go on and do more types of, let's say, more sophisticated outlets, but that self-serve farm stand, with a few peppers and some plants in the spring can be a nice way for folks to learn about you. Some of the cons about that is that uh, when folks come by, there's not gonna be anybody there to help them sell the items. There's no one there marketing your product. It's very passive. So there is, you're not gonna maximize your sales. There's no one selling the product there. And also, there is a risk of theft. When you're leaving stuff out there all the time unattended, that can happen. We've done self-serve farm stands. It did about 2 or 3 years, and we never had a problem with like major theft. Um, yeah, I've never had issues with major theft, but it is something that you have to go out there and check it and replenish it. So yeah, just be aware that is some of the downsides of it. And also got to make sure that in your town or township, whatever, that you're allowed to do this. Depending where you're at, you might be limited. So I would go and just check your township or your county or any of that before you do that. And that can be just as easy as calling up your local city hall, or just driving around and seeing if there are other farm stands in your area. If there are other folks doing it as well, the chances are either that it's not an issue, or it is legal. And also, I would say this is that when you're setting up some of the self-serve farm stand or whatever, make sure that you make it like not look pure, not too crappy. Like people like rustic farmy, but it's also like slobby in the time. And if you're trying to like scale a business and be a cornerstone in your community, you don't want to be known for being sloppy or dirty or anything that, put a little bit of time, put a tablecloth on it. Tablecloth is $5. Put a tablecloth on it and put stuff in for quart boxes. Put a nice little sign. It doesn't take too much to really sell that. Um, and it is nice too because it's really easy to get into. So that's the first type, is that self-serve farm stand. And the second type that most folks get into is wholesale or B2B, business to business. And this is a great way to move your product, especially if you want to spend less time marketing your product, right? So when you're doing wholesale or B2B, you might only have 5 to 10 customers. So it's like 5 or 10 people. You're talking chefs, your produce managers. We sell a lot of stuff to other farms as well. Let's say to other farmers. So let's say you have 10 customers. Every week you're emailing those customers what's available, and then you're doing wholesale delivery of bulk items to them. So it's great. You get to move a lot of product, and you have to communicate with less people, which is even better, and it's less labor. But when you start selling wholesale and moving that bulk item, you have to then understand you will take a lower price for it, right? You're taking the wholesale price so that end consumer, so the person who's buying it can take that and get the retail price for it. So you have to be understanding of that. And then when you're selling wholesale, the grades of the items you're selling changes depending on who it's going to. If you're selling something to a high-end restaurant and going to process it down, some things on quality might not matter as much. If you're selling to a grocery store, quality has to be AAA. It has to be the best, the best. And for my time working in grocery, I've worked not only as a farmer, but on the other side of grocery, I've worked at some high-end spots. That if stuff comes in and it's not that AAA quality, especially in that retail environment, it gets sent back every single time. So I see farmers who say, "Oh, I got this account open at the local grocery store, and I'm selling to them 10 bushel of tomatoes a week." And then the tomatoes they bring to there aren't their best. They're cracking. There's little dots on there. You might think, oh, that's fine for a farm stand or for the farmer's market. But in that retail environment, that quality might not be high enough. So make sure you understand what the demand is, and also reach out to MSU Extension, and they have standards for all of their products as well, so they can really help you with that. Some of the downside, one of the downsides is that another one is that vendor fickleness of vendors. Let's say you have 5 vendors and something goes wrong in the relationship with 2 of them. That that could be half or a third of your monthly income that's disrupted by that. So you be diverse, they're diverse enough while at the same time managing those relationships. I've been in a situation myself in the past where we were still a lot of wholesale, and two restaurants we were selling to shut down within 1 week. Right. And in small towns, restaurant shuts down, so two of them that buy farm product, that trickle down effect hurts a lot of vendors down the road. And often when the businesses shut down, especially restaurants, they don't pay because you're dealing with term limits. So let's say you say to the restaurant or you sell to the wholesale account, a lot of them have 30 or 15-day term limits, which means that from the time you drop off that bok choy, they have 30 days to write you a check, which means, let's say you drop it off May 1st. They might say, we cut checks at the end of May, but then it has to get mailed out, and then this and that. You might be not come, might not get to you till mid-May. So that could be 45 days from dropping it off to when you get it, the cash. So you have to be wary of that, understand that these type of systems can actually take a while. So your cash flow can be affected by that. And like I said, if that business, let's say you pay them on April 1st and then get cut in May, you delivered them 4 weeks of produce, and then they go out of business, which does happen. You might be in the hole for those 4 weeks because they owe the other vendor as well. So just be weary of that. Um, the next one most farmers go to, which I see, is the farmers market, which is super easy to get into as far as a way to sell. And it's a great way to learn, to understand what the community wants, what demand is. It's really a great place to connect with community. It's where you want to go to meet other farmers, meet other vendors, meet other nonprofit folks, politicians, wholesale accounts to sell to. The farmers market, we did that for over a decade. Farmers markets was the core of our foot into the community and the food business. But with that does come some downsides. It's very high labor. Driving a vehicle, setting up, tearing down, that's high labor, and it's not free, right? You're paying someone to do all that work. Um, so be very understanding of that. And also, it's a very competitive marketplace. If you join a market that has 15 other farms who are selling salad mixed tomatoes, and you're like, well, I'm doing salad mixed and tomatoes, and you show up, chances are you're going to be in a position where you're underperforming, where you're unknown. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier about market research. You got to understand what's going on there, what the demand is, and what people want. Um, and also at the type of places, there is no control over the weather, right? If it's really rainy and that's a day out, no one shows up. And also, you don't have control about what vendors get into the market with you. I've been in situations where the market is not going well, not a lot of customers, and the market managers say, "Oh, there's not enough customers. How do we fix this?" And often, what they do is they don't market more; they just add more vendors. They say, "We need more selection," and that will bring in more customers, which it can, but it has to go in line with direct marketing at the same time. So if I often get calls, especially in urban areas, Metro Detroit, where people are like, we have no farmers here, we need a farmer here to sell. And if you're a farmer and you have a website, you're going to get phone calls from every farmer's market in town that doesn't have farmers looking for farmers. And the thing is that if they're calling you trying to find farmers, that's basically saying that the market for the product that you're selling has not been built yet. Because the market was already built, if there's already demand for that, there'd already be farmers who are filling those slots. And I've been a part of new markets, of like underserved markets that you're trying to build them up, and that's great. And I've gone there and built the market up and increased traffic and did sales. But then the market manager will say, wow, sales is doing pretty well. We should add more vendors. And now you've built up a customer base, you've built it up, and then you've lost it immediately. Tell folks if it's a big market and they're already established, jump in, learn, figure out what's going on. If it's a market that needs you there, that really wants you there, then maybe sit down and be like, hey, listen, I'm willing to come here, but we have to understand that, like, if I'm growing salad, mixed spinach, and lettuce as my main thing, please don't add a salad mix farm in like July, right? So you have to be willing to go, especially when you're in some of these smaller markets, not trying to keep people out, not trying to be anti-competitive, but trying to build a solid marketplace. If you went to the grocery store to Walmart and there was 19 choices for organic tomatoes and they're all red organic tomatoes, it's like you're undercutting the sales, right? They don't have that many options. And often markets do the same thing with having too many options. So you have to be willing to negotiate and work your way through that. Um, and then the last two options we'll talk about, and then we'll open it up for questions, is the traditional CSA, which where people a traditional CSA where people give you money up front and then they get a box of produce every week for 20 weeks or box of meat or flowers, whatever you're selling. And this is a great way to cash flow a business in the spring. It's a great way to get a lot of money to help pay for your seed, your fertilizer, all that stuff like that, which is really nice. It feels good. But with that, you also get lack of cash flow in the season. So I see folks all the time, and it happened to me before too, where you take all these CSA shares, you sell them all, then you spend all that money in order to grow the food for the year, and then in the middle of the season you don't have much cash flow coming in if you're not doing anything else. So you'd be really weary about that. CSAs are a great way to connect to the community. They're a great way to have people on your farm or at a meeting location to talk to people, to build a family of folks who really support you as a vendor. So really, uh, it's a great way to get your name out there to connect to people. But also, let's say you're growing produce, to have a box of produce with seven different items in it every week for 30 weeks, if you're not an advanced grower, that is really hard. And I see a lot of new farmers go, we'll start a CSA. We'll just do that. It's that's the way to do it. And then folks, they go through all the hard work of recruiting people, planning the CSA, go through all this stuff. Then it's their first year farming, stuff dies. Understandable, but then they can't fill out a full box, and then they feel bad about themselves. They kind of like it's hard to it makes it really difficult to do that. So I would tell folks, if your very first few years you're getting established, do an aggregated CSA box with another farm. If you're growing salad mix and fresh greens, there's somebody out there in the area who's probably doing storage crops, who's doing potatoes and carrots and squashes and all kinds of stuff like that. Make a deal with them and say, hey, listen, I'm gonna buy 5 totes of this every week for that, whatever it is. You grow the greens, they grow that, and then you buy it from them and then do a box, something like that. But I tell folks all the time, like, don't be afraid to buy in product for your CSA if you want to do a full CSA box. If it's your very first year and you haven't grown any crops before or on a commercial scale, doing a full-on CSA is really challenging. And what can happen, as I seen, is that the farming scene gets a lot of people who are brand new. They start out, they create a CSA, they convince people around them to join the CSA. People join, have a horrible experience, both the farmer and the consumer, and then the consumer goes, I'm never buying a CSA ever again. And also, I'm not coming back to that farm again. So don't promise something you can't do. It's much better to grow less items, work with your community, and do work with those around you to fill that box out to offer that full selection. Or, as I said earlier, with the B2B wholesale, you can find other CSAs who are already doing this and sell to them, right? There's so many options when it comes to this to the CSA world. And if you don't have the capacity to organize, to manage people, managing emails from people who miss boxes, managing emails from folks who are unhappy with something, or it's so much more labor. But the return can be pretty high because you're getting that full retail price and you're getting all that money up front early in the season. And the last thing I'll talk about is farm stores. And a farm store is similar to a farm stand in a sense, but you open more hours. You might offer more products like milk, meats, eggs on top of the other products you're offering as well. These are a great way to have a stable community meeting space to establish yourself in an area. And it's really a nice way to sell your product because you control it from production to the final distribution as well. But the cons compared to like the other farms to the self-serve farm stand is the labor. It costs a decent amount of labor to have somebody here the full time staffing and selling the product. Um, it's one of those situations when you have dairy and meat and produce and all that you can't leave that unattended illegally too. It has to be someone here to watch over that. So yeah, there is a higher labor input for that, and it is risky because you're dealing with a lot more product you're buying in. It's a lot of input, and as we know, for farmers to take this and to do this, spend this kind of money. We don't have a ton, especially right now with inflation and extremely high fuel prices. So I would say if you want to do the farm stand, that's the very final thing you do. Don't start with that. It's more complicated than CSA is. But if you have that established location like we do now, this is the heart of our business, and it now serves its kind of like a farm stand, kind of like the farmer market does. Folks come in here all the time. They talk to us. They hear about our CSA. They learn more about the farm. So it's an easy way to be a permanent fixture in your community. But I would say, like many other compared to these other ways to sell, it is the most expensive to get into. It costs quite a bit. We're in our 14th season. We started our store last year. But we have done every single one of these options from CSAs to wholesale to the farm stand self-serve to CSA, the flat CSA. We've done it all in the past. And the last thing I'll wrap this up with is that when you start finding ways to sell your products in different outlets, you need to stack um the outlets. And what that means is that if let's say you're selling to CSA, wholesale, and a farmer's market, right? You might take all of the biggest part of your products and you might sell all that through a CSA program. And that's your set capital coming in, right? That's your 40 to 50, 100, hiring people who are buying from you every single week. But that won't consume all the product, right? Then you can take some of that and let's say whatever's left over, but left over doesn't mean leftover, it means what's available, and then sell that to wholesale within that week. Then whatever wholesale doesn't take, you take to the farmer's market, right? So you want to be able to stack these outlets on top of each other. So like right now, I'll give you an example of how our farm works. Our farm does a flexible CSA where folks order what they want online. We do a farm stand and then we do donations. So we try to sell all of our products first. We try to sell all of our products first through um, our farm through our CSA. People who are prepaid are loyal customers. Um, we then sell the rest of what we have through our farm stand. Then anything that hasn't been sold through CSA or the farm stand at the end of the week, then all goes to donation, right? So what that does is that makes sure that there is a bottom on your distribution, right? So you might do CSA, wholesale, farmers markets, a self-serve farm stand, donation, and then the compost bin, right? Kind of that, you can see how that works. So you got to have places that product can roll to from spot to spot. When we first started, at certain points, we've had less stats. We've had just wholesale or just CSA or just farmers markets. And whenever we only have one of those ways to sell, we've always been at a much riskier place in our business. When you can stack at least two or three profit driving streams on there, then you're much better shape. So I would say you want to start out with those high return options, the CSA, the wholesale or whatever, the less risky options. CSA and wholesale are much less riskier. A farmer's market, you can have a bad rain day and be stuck with all that product. So again, but I know farms who do farmers markets first, and then at the market, they then contact their wholesale accounts, and the wholesale, whatever's left over from that, then goes to donation. Whatever doesn't donate goes to compost bin, right? So be willing to stack those functions in order to create basically like filters. The produce falls through, and at the end, hopefully, there should be very little produce left over at the very end, so that we can reduce our waste. So again, I'm gonna end this out with the last thing that I'm gonna end this out with what I started with. Um, that you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to adjust. And I don't mean in the middle of summer. I mean kind of year to year, roughly. If you see that the farmer market you're selling at is not going the way you want it to go, then don't double down and invest in it. Start selling to wholesale or start doing a CSA program or start marketing something else. You can always start shifting what you're doing. And if you're in this game long enough, you're going to shift multiple times. You're going to constantly keep growing and adapting and making sure that you can sell your product. Guys, farming's super hard. It's a tough business. But if you're flexible and you listen to those in your community and you're responsive to the inputs around you, then you can be a little more aware of what's going on, and the chances of you losing out, really big are much are minimized quite a bit. So that's kind of all I'll talk to you today about as far as an outlet to sell to. I think we're going to open up for Hey, I think I saw answering those questions, and then if any other questions at all, please put them down in the chat, and then I'll do my best to answer them. Someone asked, I'm a small farmer growing saffron in 2 acres. What will be my options to market sell my limited saffron? Um, if you're growing something that's super niche like saffron, right? That's not a classic item that's consumed that far, it's not a classic item. I would look towards a wholesale option. I'd reach out to specialty chefs wherever you're at, make a list of like the top 10 restaurants, right? The fanciest restaurants who pay the highest price for that super niche product, and then make relationships with those chefs. You might be able to do like, hey, we want to do a special with you, do saffron and whatever dish is coming next week. So reach out to those type producers, and then I would definitely reach out to other farms. If there are other CSAs, um, they will probably be interested in offering saffron for 1 week to their members, possibly. So definitely look at the wholesale or the B2B, which is still wholesale, but look directly to other farms. You might be able to sell that at the farmers market, but if you are selling at the farmers market, don't go weekly. Go like once a month or something to try and move something that niche. Um, okay. Someone said, tips on growing food for value-added food producers. Great question. Okay, so in the local food scene, like in restaurants or in local food, I often see two types of businesses, right? One are businesses that take in raw ingredients and produce an item. Think of like a farm. You take in soil or fertility, seeds, plastics, whatever, and then you produce produce. And then you look and often those seeds, some of those inputs aren't not grown seeds. They're whole. They see a restaurant, say Cisco or a commercially available item like tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, and produce that into a value-added item to be consumed locally, right? So both those models are taking a cheap product and adding value to it. Well, then the other type of food businesses that take a locally produced product and turn that into a value-added processed item. And when you get into businesses that take local items, make them value-added, you have to understand that those consumer that producer is on hyper thin margins, and they themselves will probably need a really good wholesale rate for that product. So if you're trying to say I'm trying to grow, let's say, cabbage to be processed into kimchi or whatever. If you're saying I want to do value added production, then I wouldn't do farmers markets, I wouldn't do CSA. You have to be the best producer of cabbage, right? And that's what I was saying earlier about the deciding what you kind of want to do. I wouldn't do produce farmers markets and then try to value add product somebody else. You really have to maximize your production so you can get the most return on that dollar. So yeah, so if you want to grow for value added, you can, but have the price that vendor is going to purchase that item for you in writing in a contract. Because I've seen time and time again, folks go, oh, so and so, they're going to take 3 pallets of potatoes when they come in, and then the potatoes come in. You call them up and say, "Got the potatoes for you," and then they say, "I don't, I can't take that." I don't need it. I already bought my potatoes. So make sure you have it in writing, or if you have it in writing, make sure you have other places to move that product. I once had a situation where I was doing contract growing for somebody, and I had like an entire field of bok choy that I was going to harvest for them. Oh, actually, we don't need a box. We can't take it. So I had like almost a 40 by 100 block. I mean, head to head of bok choy, thousands of bok choy that we had to then rush really fast to try and sell and get rid of, which creates a lot more hassle for us. So definitely, if you're going to do value added, make sure you're at scale and make sure you have contracts or you have a place to sell the product to. Um, yeah, someone said if the saffron door, there are food hubs who sell direct to chefs. Farmland Grand Rapids, food hubs. Yeah, food options are a great option for market too. That's kind of B2B is if you can find a food hub, a CSA, other farm stands. There's farm stands in our area who purchase local products. And if you walk in there and they have, let's say, peppers from like the South stocked in there, that means they're buying peppers. Go in there and say, hey, we buy them from me. So there's always options for that. But also understand that if you're trying to get into that B2B in that wholesale game, you're now competing against everybody else in that wholesale game. And the wholesale game is get bigger, get out, right? So you have to make sure that you can be at scale if you really want to do that. Um, are there any other questions or any ideas or any other questions about scaling your business, about who to grow, who to sell to, um, anything that could help you all? Any other questions about places to sell or questions about selling at markets? We've been doing markets and direct-to-consumer retail for about 14 years now. We specialize predominantly in that direct-to-consumer, so through CSAs, farm stands. Um, and we found, particularly for me, I have friends who do only B2B, only who do wholesale, and it's great for them, and it works great for their business models. I also personally just enjoy people, and I enjoy the we get. So also make sure that the things you do, whatever outlets you choose, really fit well with your soul and who you are as a person. If you're not personable, don't be the farmer's market. If you can't sit there and smile at everybody and like take the defeat of everyone walking by and not buy, you have to be able to take that mentally, and that's not for everybody. I get a friend of mine who sells at farmers markets, and he looks kind of like a biker. He's got a lot of tattoos, and then he wears glasses and goes like this, and that's how he sits at the stand. And people don't like it scares people, So you have to make sure that you're willing to play the game, whatever it's going to be. And that game might be entertaining people at the farmers market, giving them recipes. It could be talking to chefs and doing that person to person, that one-on-one interaction to try and do that deal. So just make sure that you take care of yourself and that using that works well for you. If you don't like markets, if you don't not personable, don't do that. Or if you can't do it, hire somebody else. That's kind of the best way I would say. Don't torture yourself, because if you're torturing yourself, you won't do it for long. If the markets aren't fun, you won't do it. If wholesale isn't fun, you won't do it.
Alex, are you still with us?
Yep, you hear me?
Yep, we hear you. I would just suggest turning off your camera. I think like that. I think we're getting to that point with the internet that's kind of like uh coming in and out, but we can still
Okay.
hear you. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Well, I have a couple questions just from listening with you. I have the privilege that where I live here in Ypsilanti, Alex's farm stand is literally right up across the street from me, so like I can go there as much as I want. But I did have a question because just in our brief conversations that we've had about how you've moved from, the farmers markets to the CSA to the farm stand, when you decided to go to the farm stand route, how did you reach out to the other farmers and producers? Because you have your meat, you have your dairy, you are next to a bakery, so you get that bread from them. But like, how did that whole process come together, and how did that help with your business? Like, what was like, obviously going from just the normal CSA to a whole farm stand now, like how has that helped the business, helped you grow, help you figure out new ideas that you want to do? Kind of just walk through that process.
Yeah, great question. So before this, we had a flat CSA, which we still operate now, and that's an aggregated CSA from multiple growers that we sell all through one site. So when I was at the farmer's market, we'd be sitting there and it'd be raining, it'd be a horrible day, and then the other farmers around me would say, "Man, this sucks. I wish we had a way to sell this product that we didn't have to wait in the rain all day. I don't want to be out here right now. How do I sell this product?" And we always would talk about we need a place to sell product. We need a place to sell produce locally. And after like years of hearing this, I was like, well, I guess I'll do it then. We'll take that bullet and we'll open that location and sell local product in town. Um, so when we started going down the route of opening the farm stand and saying we wanted to sell local product, two things happened. One is that initially, folks were so excited about the idea of adding more outlets to sell the product to. So we were doing we were just telling people, oh yeah, we're starting this farm stand, we're doing this, we're buying this, whatever. Once farmers hear that you're buying product, they come to you, right? If you hear that someone's purchasing local products, as a farmer, you should be reaching out to them, find other ways to sell your product. So when we started doing this, uh, it was very surprisingly easy to find vendors who want to sell product to us. But mainly because a lot of these vendors that we're selling to or selling for have been long-term friends, have been family members that I've known for in my life. Um, and, and type of like situations where it makes me remind and say this, that when we had our flex say and we're buying products from other farms, we started out with a pile of cash on delivery, which means unlike term limits, where 30 days to get paid, we pay checks or cash when folks pick up their order. When vendors drop their orders, we pay them at that moment, which helps farmers, and it really builds up a reputation in the area that now, whenever like every week, I get emails from vendors trying to sell me their products, which I love. So at this point now, we're getting a constant stream of people reaching out to us who want to move their product through us. So that's been really nice. And kind of second part of your question, now that we've had the farm stand, now that we're open all this,
I was worried that was going to happen. Hold on, everybody. I know Alex has an option to get back in with us. We do apologize for that. Well, while he's gone, I am going to go ahead and open up the survey for you guys, just so you can go ahead and do that. Give me 1 second. So if you all could please, just as usual, go ahead and fill out that survey for us. That is really helpful. Um, just so that we can go ahead and continue providing these for you. Can you hear us, Alex?
yes, I'm back. Sorry
Okay, no
about that.
problem. No, you're
Um,
okay.
Yeah, all I was saying is that now that we have this set space where we can work at, um, the marketing for the business and the central meeting place of the business is much easier. Because folks come here all the time, they find our farm stand, they purchase from us, and then they say, "Man, I want more of this." So when that happens, we then sell them on our CSA program. We get them as long-term members. We start delivering to their houses. So really, the farm stand has now become our the farm stand has become the hub of our business that has allowed us to reach more customers.
So, um, and I did just have a question because this came up when we were talking and we kind of briefly mentioned it when we were doing the practice session, Alex. Um, with this year to year lease that you have and you guys have moved around a bunch, um how has making sure your farm is insured worked for that? Because obviously every plot of land is different and thus has different like I guess I don't want to say value, but I imagine it has different like requirements. How did that work? Because like I said, when we were talking about farm law, we were talking about liability insurance a few weeks ago with Carolyn. That kind of blew my mind how different that could be. Like, how has that worked for you guys? Especially now that you also have, the farm stand, and how is having all of that plus the farm affected how your insurance and things go with that?
Great question. Yeah, so it hasn't been super difficult in the sense that we have two different insurance policies. So maybe I should say this, that we basically have two separate businesses. We have a farm business that grows local food, and then I have the flat CSA and farm stand business that buys local food and resells it. And we basically insure them as two, even though they're still under one name, we basically we insure them both uh, for the different things they do. So uh, we have a basic liability insurance that covers the farm products. So let's say we grow a head of lettuce, that our insurance policy covers that lettuce. Then inside that policy, it also covers incidents on the farmland itself, and it covers infrastructure on the farm, and that includes our greenhouses, yeah, many greenhouses, and then that's kind of the main thing that we have on site that is insured. So then that's probably like I'd look at it, I think $300 or $400 a year, so it's pretty affordable, and that's for I think $2 million of liability insurance for the product we produce. Then we have another insurance policy that insures our farm stand. So our farm stand is it's a trailer that was an old food truck that we turned into a store. So we're insured and legally we're a food truck, and then we're insured as a food truck. So our insurance policy that we have on our product doesn't technically cover the produce once it comes to the farm stand. Technically, it's a different entity. We have to cover that as well. So we have two different insurance policies: one that covers one that covers a distribution business, and then one that covers our production business. If we weren't doing the farm stand and we were just doing farmers markets, that original policy we have also covers us at the farmers market. And it covers incidentals at the market as well. So it's hasn't been a huge issue as far as in finding insurance, but also because we rent land, um, the the uh, the cooperative we're part of at the land lease, they have a blanket policy for everybody there already. So they have a policy on the board, they have a policy that we all pay into that covers all of us on site. And then I have my own additional policy on top of that as well. And that additional policy covers, like I said earlier, the product we produce and infrastructure, whereas the insurance through the cooperative only covers like incidents on site. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And something that just I thought of while you were that I remember you talking about because you did move from different plot to different plot. How did that affect how you were going to do your business? Because obviously, depending on the size of the lot, that was going to change. You had talked about how you had a huge plot that was just bok choy. How does that change your business too? Just also because of the soil quality, because from plot to plot things could be different. How did that? Did you have to adjust as you went, or were you able to pretty much be able to grow exactly the same things that you were usually growing?
Oh man. Yeah, I tell folks that like the amount of time it took me to find land was so destabilizing for the business. I'm actually kind of like, if it wasn't for like my own personal like inability to stop, I that lack of land, that land access, and the constantly having to reinvent and constantly having to refix things, especially the soil, has been so difficult economically. And I would tell folks now that like you have to have that land. You should have the land secured first, and if you can't get the land secured, then you have to hold off on the farm. Just wait, because every time you go to a new plot, you also have to then, um, yeah, remediate soil, adjust what you can grow. And since now I've been on so many different lots, the type of things you can grow on each lot are totally different. And the type of things that do well in those lots are totally different. So I would tell folks that you really need to have a set plan before you get started on this. When I started, I was 18 years old, going to 19, and I didn't have the amount of like I didn't have um uh, uh the support at that time I needed. But if I was back there now, I would tell myself, do not start this farm business until you have a long set plan or a long set lease for your land. Which sounds hard to say and it sounds like difficult, but it's like trying to start a restaurant with no food, right? It's impossible. And I would say that we spent multiple years of 14 years. There's been a lot of that time that's been trying to fix things and trying to get the land right so we could try to use it. But if we had just started out at a good piece of land to start out with, we could have saved so much time and made so much money so much quicker. So I tell folks, make sure you have that base infrastructure set down ahead of time, ready to go, and have some idea what you're going to do ahead of time before you start your farm business.
Thank you. That actually pushes me to my next question. You were talking about being very young, being very ambitious. If you could talk to your younger self, you would change a lot. You would do a lot of different things. But what other things in this whole 14 and a half year journey for you, um, do you wish that you had known through like, USDA programs, whatever was available to all the different resources that that are available? What were things that you wish somebody could have just like shaken you and told you this is what you need to make sure you have before you do all of this?
Oh man, that's the one thing you need, which is most difficult aspect of it, is you gotta have enough working capital. That working capital has to be established ahead of time. And I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I went to business school, and like I always heard that. And like it's something I hear constantly. Got enough capital, enough working capital. And when I first started out, I was like, oh, we can work through that. We'll make enough capital as we go. But you really, first off, I wish I would have taken a year and first off saved up as much money as possible that was not to be touched through the entire year. I know that sounds asinine, but the idea of having $20,000 in the bank just sitting there waiting to be used it feels like wasteful. But if you're going to do business, you need to have backup working capital and saving to that business to really allow yourself to get through the hard parts and to work through down times. We had 3 or 4 years ago, back to back, we had a flood that flooded the entire farm, and then the few things that were left over that survived got killed in a hailstorm, like 2 weeks after that. And luckily, it was later in my business, and we had that rainy day fund built up, and that rainy day fund allowed me to keep farming. It allowed me to fix things and get back on track. But if that had happened, we didn't have that money put aside, then the business would have collapsed in that moment. And it doesn't sound fun. I know it's hard, but you need to have that a rainy day fund plus some working capital set aside before you start your farm business. And two, take as much time as you can to learn from other farmers first and other farm vendors first. Like go and volunteer for 2 or 3 days on farms. Like, it doesn't sound fun. Like, and everyone always say, I don't want to do free labor. I don't want to do this or that. But it's like if you're going to start farming, you better get used to the idea of doing free labor because there are times in your life where you don't have to do things on the farm that you're not getting paid for, and that's the reality of it. So I tell folks all the time, like they're worried about doing too much free labor. It's like if you're worried about giving free labor, then don't even start farming. It's not even it's don't worry about it. But yeah, make sure you go out there and you talk to everybody, do your market research. Talk to farmers, talk to vendors, talk to restaurants before you have a website, before you put a seed in the ground. You need to understand these things. And if you understand the local markets, truthfully understand them, have money saved up that you can use in an emergency, then the chances of you surviving past that first year or two are much higher. I see a lot of people who come to the area here locally who are not from here, who are attracted to the area because of the local food scene, which is great. But then they come in not knowing what's going on. They don't understand the community. They don't understand the demands here, and they burn out in a year or two, right? They can't make it past a year or two, so they don't understand the local demand. Take some time, learn demand, learn the community before you invest a single dollar.
Absolutely. Um, and yeah, I do remember your old farm used to flood a lot. I remember when you were at the farmers market and I was the market assistant here in Ipsy, and you would talk about that, how just devastating that is to like not be able to farm for half a season because you're completely flooded out. Um, So thank you so much for talking about that. Um, well, I've asked a lot of questions. I do want to open it up to everyone else. Erin, Bekah, were there any questions that came up for you while you were listening, or just anything you would like to ask Alex in general?
No, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Actually I was wondering, I know oftentimes people will say, I'm working in my business so much that I don't have time to work on my business. So I would love to hear more about like time management, especially when it comes to like bookkeeping and sort of your process for that piece of it.
Man, great question. That's probably the minute the minute I was able to stop working in my business or working on it is when we saw true growth.
Mm.
When we hired out labor, when we created systems to do things done and create the system, bring somebody else in, allow them to work, and then allow yourself to go on and do those higher end tasks. I talked to a lot of farmers, a lot of growers, producers, and one thing happens every single time that the bigger they get, the more they grow, the more time they have to work in the office, doing paperwork, doing accounting, all that kind of stuff. It just grows naturally with the business. And since you're the owner, you end up having to do it all. I would tell folks if you have the money, invest in programs like QuickBooks that can automate that for you. Um, do things like MailChimp that are like automated email newsletters, things pay the money to automate whatever you can. And automation comes through hiring labor, hiring programs, whatever it means. But you have to do everything you can to to get yourself away from those repetitive tasks that you can hand off to other people, so that you can go and make sure that the business is surviving and thriving, which is very difficult. Especially in July and August, you get bogged down, and it's hard to say, okay, I need to stop doing this. I need to check my receipts, or I have to check profitability on things. But like, it's very important to not get caught up too much in the business and allow yourself to do that. And one thing that we do is that we set schedules for certain times to do certain things. So like on our farm, every Sunday, I do our newsletters and our inventories like that. But that happens on Sunday morning. And I do it every single Sunday morning. I'm here at the farm stand. I'm working. I do that during that. And then on Monday morning, we do all of our accounting stuff. But like having set days, having set times, put a reminder in your calendar that goes off every Monday 8 a.m. that says do your accounting, right? Or approve your bank transactions for the week. Set times for it, put a timer on your phone, and then follow that schedule. Having a set schedules really helps a lot, because it can so easily get away from you, and things can happen. See, midsummer, let's say you're doing farmers markets in midsummer and you're not tracking what your sales are. You could get to end of the year and be like, wait a second, we didn't make any money this year, or this happened, or we're underselling tomatoes or whatever. You need to be able to be aware of that kind of stuff earlier on in the season. So definitely set time for it. And I'm not perfect. I'm I'm a human. I'm a business owner like everybody else, and there are times when like we're behind, things don't get done, and the business does reflect that. So if you can put time away for it, make sure you do.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great advice, especially when it comes to building systems
Yeah, yeah.
and
I would tell
automating.
folks check out Ben Hartman's book, The Lean Farm.
Mm.
It's probably one of the best farm books out there for understanding systems and building your small farm towards profitability. In the sense of it helps you create systems and follow them. And if you're not a systems mindset thinker, like not everybody is, this book really helps with that.
The Lean Firm by Ben Hartman, you said?
Yep. He has like three books now, but his first one's probably it's a great place to start.
I can put that in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. And I do have a follow-up question kind of related to that. Um, and now with you taking on a lot more of that, admin, accounting side of the farm and having to rely more heavily on farm employees, unfortunately here in Michigan, we have a very finite growing
Mhm.
season for most products. Obviously we have, tunnels and greenhouses and things like that. How have you one, found people to work the farm to the scale that you are now, and to also retain those? Because I feel like, a lot of times to be able to remove yourself from a lot of that more hands-on production stuff so you can focus more on the business and not, working the business, you have to have those relationships built up, right? You have to have that level of trust that they're going to be able to do what they need to do at the quality you're expecting of them with very little supervision on your end. So how have you, been able to garner that? How did you find those kind of people? And, just getting them to come back, because obviously, being quote unquote, shut down for, 3 months out of the year, people can move on to other things.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I would say first thing is that uh, one decision we made is that we're a year-round business. So we operate 12 months out of the year. We just shut down for the holidays. And that not only is that for customer retention, but that's for employee retention, right? Um, so one thing is the year-round operation. But the second aspect is that we hire basically two types of employees now. We have uh, kind of employees who we have an employee who does like year-round operations. So they manage CSAs, they help with packing, they run farm stands, deliveries, things that happen year-round. And then we have seasonal employees who come in just for the summer and they just do manual labor. Um, so in the past, we tried to make those the same person and tried to like have find one perfect person to do all this stuff, which kind of ended up not working out too great. So our CSA and our farm stand, that part of the business, it operates year round, 4 days a week. So that has the benefit of having that built-in labor, the built-in labor demand year round from that. And then our seasonal help is usually only here 8 or 9 months out of the year. Um, and we just bring those in the spring. And a lot of that comes down to like not only the trust, but like to what they'll do. Like our seasonal workers don't touch money. They don't touch like packing that much. They mainly just work on doing like manual labor with me on the farm, assisting me. And then our uh, year-round employees are definitely much more trusted. They're trained employees and they're more long-term workers. Finding those people is difficult. And it can be hard to find someone you trust, especially since, like, to give you an example, my one worker, she breaks down all the produce and gets it ready for CSA packing day. And like I trust her to sort product, to grade, to understand what's right and what's wrong, and to call me when something goes wrong. It goes super wrong. So, to train people on that does take time and like a lot of energy, and it's not easy. And I'd often say that in the past, when we didn't have a year-round demand for labor as far as the farm stand, it was much harder to maintain long-term labor because people move on, understandably so, pretty easily. So I would say you have to, one, have systems in place so that when people show up to work for you, they can do the work and you're not retraining in the same sense. So having the systems written down on paper and do them every single week. So that times when people step in, it's not hard to replace them. Um, but I would definitely say that like that trust part is really difficult. It's difficult to do that part, and I'm very lucky that I've been in one town for a while. I've got a lot of social capital, and also not only are we a for-profit business, but we also are heavily, heavily, heavily involved in the local community around us, much more than a lot of local other farms are, and to the point where we have a good reputation, and we really attract people who believe in our mission. We attract people to us who care about local food, care about the community, and who really care about local food access. So when you hire people who actually share those values along with you, it makes it much easier to bring them on board. And then I'd also say that like as employees move up that line, give them be more transparent with them. Let them see some numbers. Let them see sales. Like my one worker, she sees exactly what's coming through the farm stand. She sees payments and just passively through working. And if you tell your workers, hey, listen, here's what I'm paying. Here's what I can afford. If we make more money, I will pay more if we can grow that. And if they can see growth, if they can see hard times, whatever it is, they understand what's going on. And when people don't understand what's going on in the business, and you come out of nowhere, and you're like, when employees don't understand what's going on, then when things happen or go wrong, it's gonna be a shock to them. They don't know what's going on, or they'll constantly assume, oh yeah, I want another raise. I want more money, which understandably so. I want the same thing. We all need more money. But if they see what's going on, understand what's going on, and have dialogue with your workers, like I do, we say, hey, listen, we're going to, I want to give you a raise this year if we can. If we can't, we'll for sure do bonuses. We do holiday bonuses every year for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, and we do like bonuses not just for hourly employees but for seasonal employees too, just as a way to say thank you. And those little things like that, taking people to lunch, that those little type of relationship things you can build help not only help you retain customers or retain employees, but it helps you affect the opinion of working for you in the community. So now like I get like, 2 emails a week in spring, people trying to find jobs. And people come in all the time knowing who you are, knowing you pay a good wage, knowing you're good to your workers. People come and find you. Well, at the same time, there are other farmers who do the opposite and have a much harder time finding workers. So I would say to stay on your values. If you live your if your business reflects the values that you hold and you treat people with respect, I think it's much easier to maintain that.
Awesome. And then I just have one final question, and then we'll see if the rest of the chat does. Um, you were talking about your online market, and I remember right when COVID hit and we had to transition when I was working for the Ypsilanti Farmers Market, we had to transition all our farmers to an online platform, and we use local food marketplace. When you decided to do your CSA and farm stand and put everything up on your website, I'm not exactly sure what platform you used, but how did that happen? How did that out for you? And just like some little cost breakdowns of what that is if people do decide to try to do a CSA that way.
Yeah, if you're trying to do online sales, whether through a flat CSA, online farmers market, there's no shortage of folks who are going to sell you a program to do that. When we started it out, it was 2 years before, a year before COVID, and the we put our business online not because of like not because of like of demand from customers, but because I didn't have the energy to do markets in the same way. So we said, oh, okay, we'll just put it online and that will work just as well in the meantime. And then COVID hit and we were already set up online. We were already ready to go. So we skyrocketed immediately because it was April. We were the only ones who were year round, and we were online, and we were no contact picked up already. So just fit into our business model already, what was happening. Um, but I did see that quickly after, community sentiment changed back to more in-person shopping. So that's the reason why we built the farm stand, because I saw the trend going from online pickup back to community driven in person. So again, as I was saying earlier, you have to adjust based on what the demand is. Our program we use is I use WooCommerce, which is just a basic online program, a bit like an online website building program. And then I spent like 4 or 5 months custom building my own program inside of there that runs our CSA to do what I wanted to do. And the reason why we did it that way is uh, it would save us so much money. Since I own the program and all I have to pay for is the fees for transacting, we keep a majority of the dollars that folks spend with us. You can use there's programs like Local Line, Farmer's Hand, what's there, I mean, there's tons of them, and there's even now some open source programs as well that allow you to do it as well. When we chose the WooCommerce option, we did that just because it was easy to use and I'm decently handy with computers. And the cool part is that if you do one of these open source programs or use WooCommerce and install your own programs on top of that, is that there are people online who you can hire to do the coding for you or to fix it for you. So for us, the investment to own the program was worth it to not have to pay the long-term fees from those hosting programs. And now there's free sites that basically do the same thing that we do. But back when we started, it was pretty limited as far as the options go. And I would say the online works great. It's a great way to access a certain type of customer. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about stacking functions or stacking outlets, where like it's a great idea. It works great. We have a lot of customers who really value that online ordering experience and delivery. But for as many people who appreciate that, we also have people who just want to shop in person. So for us, having both options available was really important.
Thank you. Was there any other just after everything that was just said for the chat, was there any other follow-up questions that you had for Alex today? Give everyone a minute or two. Well, I want to just thank you again, Alex, for taking the time today and for working through our tech issues. And I know that you and I had talked before the webinar started. I'm happy to hear that the farm is doing okay after the crazy storm that just came through. And yeah, I just want to also thank all of you for coming here to these learning sessions. It has been a treat to have all of you here, and I hope everyone has taken something away from all the different weeks. And yeah, thank you again so much. We will go ahead and post the recording and Alex's walkthrough sheet that he has provided me soon. As we work through getting those, as I mentioned, we did have weeks 1 through 4 up on the Emerging Farmers website already. So if you do want to look at those recordings, those are available, and we will be working on getting weeks 5 through 7 up shortly. Erin, Bekah, I wanted to give you guys a second to just go ahead and say something, as this is going to be our last one today.
Well, thanks, Alex. I just really appreciate you being here and appreciate all the farmers who attended. So thanks so much.
Agree. Echoing that. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the farmers that have been attending week to week. And thank you for all your great questions. And Jazmin, thank you for facilitating these each week. It's been incredible. And yeah, I just really appreciate your partnership and the information that we're able to provide.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me and being my co-hosts and working through all of the different things and monitoring the chat for me. That was very instrumental in making sure that this program worked well. Again, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And with that, we will go ahead and wrap up the learning sessions. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and week. And if you have not already, please sign up for our newsletter for the Michigan Emerging program, as we will be hosting more resources, webinars, things like that in the future. So if you want to be notified when we'll be doing that again, please feel free to sign up. And also, if you have any questions for the Michigan Good Food Fund, please sign up for their newsletter, as well as they do also offer other resources and webinars as well. Thank you, everyone, so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.